Good afternoon, everyone. You'll soonly learn why Target's locking everything up. 150-year floods ravaging Brazilian croplands. This is what their grow zones look like, and you'll understand why the cost of bread and food could rise so quickly through history, which it has. Cloud seeding 2 weeks later, still setting record floods across the Middle East, starting with waterfalls in Oman, now inland sea forming 60 square mile lake, yep, confirmed, to the horizon. Sublakes and sectors across the empty quarter filling with water. Torrential rains off the buildings in Turkey. Got Iran floods, Kenyan floods. And maybe we just need to chill out and enjoy the sunset and let the world's problems go by for a couple days. Rest in the soul. And I've done this slide a few videos back. Seems that Target is starting to lock up all merchandise, and they're going to roll out a delivery service in the parking lots. So you can see why this is happening suddenly. Whoever knew this food price increase ramping up immediately would cause a lot of theft to begin. So preemptively, they're locking it up. But who knows the cycle? Well, we can predict that. Historic rainfall leads to 150-year floods in Brazil. It's not just in Brazil, but the main crop growing areas in the south. We look at total corn production, everything from Sao Paulo down being hit. And also if we're looking at the wheat production, mainly hit with these record floods. So what do I mean by this? This is the crop growing areas, what they look like submerged. So even if it's not the crops themselves, think about all the auxiliary help for the machinery, repair parts, people living out there. Rail, road, all disrupted at the moment. We're looking in Santa Maria and Rio Grande Sul, and it's never-ending water as far as you can see every valley. This is off the helicopters. Rescue crews were looking for those stranded on roofs. I mean, with this much flooding, Porto Alegre, also Brazilian army out, and we always see Tartarian building. Maybe not, it's a newer one, but still the same type of architecture. Up to the doors. Now, if that filled in with debris, we have the construction equipment now to dig it out, but would you have 200 years ago? That's the question. Or would you have made that the new doorway to enter? That's an off topic for another video, but as far literally as you can see, it is nothing but floodwaters. And then into Porto Alegre itself, Rio Grande do Sul, neighborhoods, cities, factories, farmland, and it does not matter where you go. Which now puts Brazilian production under heavy strain. Now, even after the water recedes, you know, what's going to happen, A, with the crops that were in the fields that were going to be harvested? Question, you know, what's it going to do for grain production across, you know, some of the larger producers and exporters? This is not a storm front that only stayed within the borders there. You got to think about Uruguay, Paraguay also. I mean, these kind of unusual 150-year floods, if they're in crop zones, damage the food supply. So now we're coming into a food insecure period anyway. Jet streams changing around, different temperature variances, a lot of losses around the world. Very front and center now. They can no longer mask it. So when I started the Adapt 2030 channel, I would say we're going to come to this point where it can no longer be masked, and this would start the tripping of panic buying for those getting ready, and at that point all the reserves would be stripped out, and what we grew is what we get. We're getting dangerously close to this point of awareness right now. So how's the world going to react when they do become aware is more the question. While the Fed's most trusted recession indicator is flashing code red, every recession since 1945 has been preceded by a yield curve inversion. Meanwhile, the M2 money supply is meaningfully contracting for only the fifth time since 1870. All signs appear to point to a sizable downturn for the Dow, S&P, and NASDAQ. Gold prices have been hitting all-time highs, and the rally is far from over. Call the Proud Americans of the Patriot Gold Group today before it's too late, and remember, mention the Adapt 2030 channel. And Patriot Gold Group has a no-fee-for-life IRA where your IRA or 401k can be in physical gold or silver. and the No Fee for Life IRA on qualifying rollovers. Reach out to Patriot Gold Group, 888-546-7020 for your free investor guide today. And now on with the video. Which brings us to a world aware of cloud seeding over the Middle East causing record floods. That was in Dubai 2 weeks ago. But see the knock-on effects here 2 weeks after experts warned. They are getting another round of floods. And this is in Saudi Arabia, I do believe, that river running down roads there previously. But you know, cloud seeding was a thing of myth and legend and tinfoil hat wearing just a couple of years ago. We talked about it, geoengineering. Now they're coming out saying, hey, we're trying to block out the sun, trying to reflect particles. We don't need the sun to grow food, the most powerful thing in the sky that uses it. But anyway, now they're coming out and saying, yeah, it's an ongoing project and this is what caused all the floods. And thanks to Jim Lee, climate viewer here, this great image that came out, the different ripples as we see in the atmosphere. Scraping the mountains, beautiful shot. Now, all this rain, the stories were coming out that the deserts were flooding and turning into inland seas, but you knew it'd be a little bit of time until we started to get a lot of photos out of here. This is in the empty quarter between Al-Aflaj and Al-Sul Ali, behind the mountain range there, and it did start to fill up. And this verifies helicopters going up and seeing as far as they could see to the horizon water. So a lot of these floods originated and have, there's mountain ranges in Oman and also Yemen, and when the water comes off, prone to flooding also. It's got to back up somewhere. The Marib Dam as well, Yemen starting to refill, but they didn't really have the dam up as much. I don't think it'll get very deep because the original dam's been destroyed from 800 AD, so see how that water works there. But let's start in Oman here, and the drainage out into the empty quarter. Now, that is a boat out there. Some people have been taking boats out there looking for who knows what, but it's deep enough to actually take a small fishing boat out there. If we look at Marmul, 60 kilometers from the coast, so 6 times 6, about 36 miles, so 0.6 of a mile is 1 kilometer, so just do the simple math, 6 times 6, 36 miles, and you can see where it's backing up here as well. Now, the newest images to come out just this week are of this. After the desert, the floods have stopped, now that silt is starting to fall out of the water column, and they're getting something that appears as any lake that we would see. Quite interesting, the desert shall bloom again. And also from space, what they're showing is the drainage or the runoff on some of these areas. So remember, multiply everything by 0.6 to get an easy comparison. I'll make that 9 kilometers to make it 6 times 9, 5.4 miles across there on that one. And then if we go 15 times 6, 9 miles across? I'll bring that down to 50. I'll just round it up to 15 miles just to make it easy math. So looking at a good 9 miles across on the next one. And then there's others that are larger, again, the previous. And then they start to measure the riverbeds, 1.23 kilometers. You're not quite a mile across there, but that's the width of the water coming through these wadis and runoff basins. That's a tremendous amount of water for some of the driest places on the planet. That's all I can possibly say about that. And again, a valid question. How long would it take for the desert to turn into healthy soil and also turn into grasslands and arable fields of plenty for animals to thrive once again? Doesn't appear to take very long. We've definitely hit it. We're in the crux of it. It's already begun into that transition point. And that's the whole thing that's being carefully managed right now. The perception of it, the reasons for the change, and the control of your thoughts and ideas so you don't rock the financial system when this is occurring. Because if you knew what was coming, a lot of people would just say, I'm really not going to worry about the retirement, I'm not going to go to work, don't care, do that, I'm just going to stay home, get ready, get the food growing. I got enough to get me by until this, flip of the switch. But that would definitely disrail everything or disrupt it immediately almost. If everybody were to stop working, or a majority of people would just say, you know what, nothing else to live for except getting ready for these changes, why else? And that's the reason the perception is being managed so tightly, what we can talk about, what we can't talk about, the changes we're seeing globally, and what's about to come next with the food shortages and the ever-rising food prices and incredible skyrocketing just daily costs of life that we're about to experience. They're going to point every finger every other way except back to the central banks. Speaking of which, Turkey buying a tons and tons and tons of gold. But this time we're going to focus on the rain coming off the rooftops here. Torrential rain sweeping through Ankara. You sometimes see that after big earthquakes where swimming pools will spill off the side. Saw that in Taiwan. Some of the footage there after the big 7.0 earthquake shook off a bunch. But this is just the rain coming off the top of the building that's totally full up there, that can't go anywhere else, and it's just spilling over a waterfall off the high rises. And if we look at Iran, also inundated with flood after flood after flood. This is about 34th year that they've been inundated with some massive, I mean massive, floods. But if you go back 6,000 years, Mesopotamia, grasslands, forests, desert now. Kenya flooding, that's a bridge being ripped from its foundations in the floodwaters. I like those old bridges with the metal I-beams like that. And Nairobi flooded downtown. A lot of trash has been apparently clogging up the water system there. So, maybe better trash management and you'd have a better flood control system. I think those two definitely are related. And if we look at the Netherlands here, but they do sometimes get rain. Once it fills up to a certain point, the water really can't go anywhere. They're so low-lying. They can only exit so much water. So obviously they've surpassed that point and it's starting to fill again. And then you'll see why through history food prices can rise so quickly. I mean, you look at November of 2022, about midway through, and you got to realize this is the price of bread in Germany. So before November 1918, the cost of a loaf of bread in Germany was 1 German mark. By November of 2022, you really start to get into some big inflation, like 163 times larger. 163 marks to buy a loaf of bread. But here's the big one. Now, once you take that 1 year jump step, it goes from 163 to 1.5 million. It can run away through past history. We've seen it run. But are we prepared for that in this world today? Absolutely not. Everybody would lose 90% of their wealth because if they didn't back it up some way with metals or materials or however it would be, having different currencies outside the dollar. If you didn't back that up in some way, real estate, property, forest land, whatever, farmlands, animals, they'll go back in history and really see what was tools, seeds, whatever. If you don't have something like that that you can trade, barter for, or exchange for labor, then you're going to be the one standing in the breadlines. And remember, even in Germany and Hungary both, they did feed the people bread, but at the end of it, it turned out to be more like sawdust mixed with a little bit of, what was that? Barley at the end. It was a loaf of bread, but it contained a majority of sawdust, just to put something in the belly. So even if they're reliant on that, just keep it in mind. We're coming into a point like that again right now, globally. This time it might not be limited to 1 or 2 nations. It's going to be far further widespread. So again, chill out for just a moment here and enjoy every breath you take on this planet, on this beautiful blue planet that we exist. It's artificially constructed at the moment. We shall break free of that very soon. I do appreciate you watching. I hope you got something out of the video. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.